Imagine a company so powerful, it doesn't just invest money, it moves markets. It doesn't just influence companies, it shapes entire industries. It doesn't just hold assets, it holds control. That company is BlackRock. $10 trillion under management, more than the GDP of most nations. Yet the public barely understands what this means. They see it as just another investment firm. But behind the scenes, it is a shadow bank, a silent architect of global finance. Governments, corporations, and even central banks consult it. Its decisions ripple across the world, sometimes before anyone notices. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. We reveal the hidden power structures, the strategies, and the invisible levers that allow one company to wield trillions without a spotlight. To understand BlackRock, you need to understand scale. $10 trillion isn't a number, it's influence. Think about ETFs. Most investors see a fund, they see diversification. What they don't see is BlackRock controlling voting rights in thousands of companies simultaneously. It can shift corporate governance, board decisions, and mergers, all without public attention. Consider central banks. BlackRock advises governments on policies, debt issuance, and even economic recovery programs. That's not investment advice, that's shaping the very rules of the financial system. Now, layer in the interconnected web of subsidiaries, partnerships, and ETFs. Every dollar they move interacts with multiple markets simultaneously. Stocks, bonds, commodities, derivatives. The effect is exponential, like a stone creating ripples in an ocean. Most people think the market is free. It isn't. The market follows the invisible hand of giants like BlackRock, quietly, methodically, inexorably. So how do they do it? How does a company quietly wield such unimaginable power? Ownership in the shadows. BlackRock doesn't just hold shares, it controls them. Through ETFs, index funds, and institutional holdings, it votes on decisions for countless companies. This isn't just influence, it's control over corporate strategy at a massive scale. Leverage of information. They have access to data no ordinary investors. To understand BlackRock is to understand the billionaire mindset scaled to an institution. Every move is strategic, calculated, and layered. Risk is never gambling, it's asymmetry and leverage. Visibility is a liability. Most of their influence is invisible, because transparency equals vulnerability. Think of it like a chessboard the size of the planet. BlackRock doesn't just move one piece. It moves hundreds simultaneously, predicting the reactions of every other player. By the time a retail investor sees the board, the game has already been decided. Most people think money is static. A bank account, a stock portfolio, a savings account. For BlackRock, money is fluid, dynamic, alive. Trillions flow through ETFs, derivatives, and funds like a living organism. Every allocation is a strategic decision, anticipating macroeconomic shifts, regulatory changes, and geopolitical events. Control is not about accumulation, it's about orchestration. Every dollar moves with purpose, multiplying influence while minimizing risk. They don't just react to the market, they design the market, subtly, silently, invisibly. And the average investor? They follow, they react. They wonder why they can't keep up. Here's the real secret. BlackRock's $10 trillion isn't just financial. It's political, social, and systemic. Governments consult it. Policy decisions echo its analysis. Pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, even emergency economic measures are influenced by its models. This is why the term shadow bank fits. The company operates in a gray zone between finance and governance. It isn't a government. It isn't a private citizen. Yet it has influence over both. The ultimate lesson? Wealth without influence is powerless. Influence without strategy is fleeting. BlackRock combines both, invisibly. Even if you're not managing $10 trillion, there is a lesson here. Think in systems, not transactions. Leverage networks of power. Understand the rules before you play. Treat money as a tool to orchestrate outcomes, not just as numbers to accumulate. And remember, Invisibility is power. The less people see your moves, the stronger you become. The ultra-rich and ultra-powerful think in layers, flows, and systems. They anticipate decades ahead. Every decision compounds influence, risk, and return. And most importantly, they play the game of global power, rather than merely trying to survive in it. When you understand BlackRock, you understand the financial matrix. You understand that markets are not random. They are orchestrated, influenced, and sometimes directed by giants in the shadows. Your path isn't T to emulate them in scale. It's S to emulate the mindset of systems, influence, and strategic invisibility. Build empires, not just wealth. Build networks, not just accounts. Think decades, not days. Operate like the architects of the unseen. And remember this, the world is ruled not just by money. It is ruled by those who control the flow of money, silently, invisibly, unopposed. Before $10 trillion, before global influence, there was a man with a vision, Larry Fink. A bond trader in the 1970s, Fink saw patterns others ignored. While most focused on immediate gains, he studied risk, systemic vulnerabilities, and capital flows at scale. He understood one truth. The financial system is only as strong as the data that informs it. In 1988, Fink co-founded BlackRock with 7 partners and $250 million in assets. Small by today's standards, but the ambition was massive, to create a firm that managed risk, not just money, and did so with a precision no one else could match. From the start, BlackRock was different. They weren't content with being another Wall Street firm. They wanted to engineer the infrastructure of global finance itself, to anticipate crises, and to create a platform where money, risk, and decisions moved as one. The early days weren't easy. Fink had to convince clients that a firm focused on risk management could outperform traditional firms obsessed with short-term returns. Skeptics laughed, but discipline, patience, and a systems-oriented mindset won. BlackRock grew quietly, steadily, and strategically. The true game changer? Aladdin. Aladdin isn't software. It's the backbone of the entire empire. Think of it as a living, breathing intelligence system that monitors trillions of dollars in real time, models risk, forecasts markets, and gives decision-makers predictive insights before anyone else even notices. Risk management. Every bond, stock, derivative, and portfolio is stress-tested against hundreds of scenarios. Aladdin predicts crashes before they happen. It identifies correlations invisible to human analysts. Global insight. Aladdin sees markets as a single organism, not disconnected silos. A shift in European bonds affects U.S. equities, Japanese debt, and emerging markets. Aladdin calculates these interactions instantly. Client integration. Aladdin isn't just internal. Governments, institutions, and banks rely on its analytics. BlackRock doesn't just move money, it moves insight, creating influence over policy and financial flows worldwide. By 2025, Aladdin managed over $30 trillion in assets for clients, including BlackRock's holdings. It became the unseen nervous system of global finance, a predictive engine that shapes the world silently, invisibly. BlackRock doesn't just invest. It controls the levers of corporate governance. Through ETFs and index funds, BlackRock holds stakes in thousands of companies. With that comes voting power. They can influence board appointments, mergers, executive pay, and strategic decisions. Their influence isn't forceful. It's subtle, calculated. Companies often comply without realizing why, because BlackRock's decisions are woven into market dynamics. They also advise governments. From debt issuance to recovery programs, BlackRock has been tapped to manage and design economic strategy, blurring the line between private and public power. The takeaway? Money is only part of the game. Control, influence, and foresight are where real power lies. BlackRock demonstrates how capital, insight, and timing converge to shape the financial universe. Now let's dive into the mechanics. How does BlackRock maintain such dominance? Layered ownership. BlackRock holds stakes across sectors and continents. This interconnected web allows control without exposure. Strategic voting. Through ETFs, BlackRock can influence thousands of shareholder decisions simultaneously. Their vote is often decisive in corporate governance matters. Derivative networks. Not just investments in companies, but derivative contracts that amplify leverage while mitigating downside, making risk management a source of profit, not fear. Private intelligence. Data is everything. Insider insights, regulatory anticipation, and market intelligence flow into Aladdin and human analysts alike. BlackRock doesn't chase trends, it predicts them. Global arbitrage. They exploit inefficiencies between markets, currencies, and instruments. Capital flows faster than news cycles, compounding wealth before the world notices. Larry Fink's guiding philosophy: control, prediction, invisibility. Every action is calculated decades ahead. Every client portfolio, every ETF, every asset is part of a larger ecosystem. They minimize visibility, because in finance, visibility equals vulnerability. The lesson for the viewer: it's not about short-term accumulation. It's about creating systemic leverage, layering control, and acting invisibly. BlackRock's philosophy mirrors that of sovereign billionaires: invisibility, orchestration, and mastery of flow. BlackRock thrives in chaos. Every financial shock is analyzed, simulated, and leveraged. 2008 crisis. BlackRock advised the government and acquired distressed assets. Pandemic. Aladdin analyzed market vulnerability and guided strategic acquisitions. Every crisis isn't just a test, it's a playground for strategic compounding. Most investors panic. BlackRock moves quietly, deliberately, invisibly. Let's unpack Aladdin further. It's more than software. It's a predictive oracle for capital, correlation mapping across trillions in assets, scenario simulation for geopolitical events, currency shifts, and regulatory changes, portfolio optimization for maximum return while minimizing exposure. Aladdin allows BlackRock to act before public perception catches up, making billions while others scramble reactively. Voting power in thousands of companies simultaneously. Influence over governments and central banks via advisory roles. Ownership through ETFs, where BlackRock doesn't just invest, it governs. AI-driven predictions that anticipate market movements. Multi-layered international structures that move capital legally and efficiently. These are not speculative claims. They are well-documented mechanisms of financial sovereignty. Even if you don't control trillions, you can think like BlackRock. Build systems, not just accounts. Use predictive insight rather than reactive guessing. Layer assets and influence strategically. Treat money as a dynamic organism, not static numbers. The takeaway: control the flow, and you control outcomes. BlackRock is not just a company. It's a shadow empire, a system, a matrix of influence, capital, and prediction. Larry Fink built more than a financial firm. He built a model for operating at the highest level of global power, invisibly, strategically, and exponentially. As you leave this video, remember this. You may not hold $10 trillion, but you can adopt the mindset of orchestration, systemic leverage, and silent influence. That is the path from ordinary to sovereign. When you think of BlackRock, you think of numbers, assets, ETFs, maybe a skyscraper, maybe Larry Fink's face on the news. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface lies a network of influence so sophisticated, so layered, that it controls decisions, policies, and capital flows without anyone noticing. Imagine a spider web spun across continents, linking governments, corporations, and financial institutions. The threads are invisible. They carry no sound. Yet every vibration, a policy shift, a regulatory change, a market rumor, is felt instantly, amplified, and reacted to with precision. This is the network that BlackRock inhabits, a hidden ecosystem where money, information, and influence flow simultaneously. creating outcomes before the rest of the world even knows a move has occurred. Fink didn't build this empire with brute force. He built it with anticipation, invisibility, and leverage. Every relationship is strategic, from central bank officials to sovereign wealth funds, from pension fund managers to emerging market regulators. He doesn't just invest money, he invests influence, subtly shaping decisions and nudging outcomes in ways that multiply BlackRock's control. And then there's Aladdin, which is not just software, it is a predictive intelligence engine. It maps risks, forecasts reactions, and models possibilities with a depth no human mind could match. If a European central bank hints at tightening monetary policy, Aladdin runs simulations across every derivative, bond, and equity in its network, calculating the invisible reactions across continents. By the time human analysts read the news, BlackRock has already positioned itself, and the world has followed. But it doesn't stop there. BlackRock's influence extends into the realm of narrative control. Through subtle communications, reports, and briefings, it can steer sentiment, instill confidence, or seed doubt. Economies respond not only to policies, but to perception. And perception is often curated by entities like BlackRock. They don't need to announce moves, they just create conditions where markets behave as if they have. This is orchestration at a planetary scale. Consider the quiet power behind corporate governance. Owning shares in thousands of companies is one thing, voting them strategically is another. But BlackRock takes it further, influencing board compositions, succession plans, and strategic priorities. Decisions made quietly in boardrooms can ripple into industries, shifting supply chains, reshaping markets, and indirectly benefiting their positions. These aren't transactions you see in headlines. They are silent maneuvers that compound influence over decades. Here's a cinematic thought. Imagine every Fortune 500 company as a set of dominoes. Most investors see isolated pieces. BlackRock sees the full network. They know which piece to touch to start a chain reaction that realigns industries, markets, and even government policy. And all of this is done quietly, legally, invisibly, a true masterclass in strategic imperceptibility. Now let's discuss information arbitrage, a concept almost no one understands. Most investors react to public data, delayed reports, or news alerts. BlackRock, through private networks, proprietary research, and real-time analysis, captures information before it becomes public. They don't break laws, they simply move faster than the system was designed to handle. It's a temporal advantage, turning early insights into exponential gains. But here's where the dopamine spike comes in. The true power isn't to just money. It's control over systemic behavior. By influencing liquidity, corporate strategies, and investor sentiment simultaneously, BlackRock can guide markets without spending a cent beyond its assets. Imagine conducting an orchestra of trillions, and the instruments play exactly how you want, silently, invisibly, without applause or recognition. That is the pinnacle of influence. Picture this: every single trade, every bond, every derivative, every portfolio of significance across the planet, observed, measured, simulated, and archived in one machine. This machine doesn't sleep. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't forget. It just calculates reality itself. This machine is called Aladdin. Now, the mainstream media will casually describe it as a risk management system. But that's like calling the Manhattan Project a physics experiment. Aladdin is not just about managing risk. It is about modeling the world. Every pension fund that plugs into it, every sovereign wealth fund, every corporate treasury, becomes a node in BlackRock's neural network. By using Aladdin, they are unknowingly feeding it with their data, their vulnerabilities, their strategies. Think about the implications. Aladdin doesn't just know BlackRock's positions. It knows everyone's positions. The competitors, the allies, the governments, the funds. It sees where liquidity sits, where fear hides, where opportunity glows. It's like playing chess when you can see your opponent's hand, their next 3 moves, and their psychological tells, all before they even know them themselves. Aladdin processes 20,000-plus portfolios every day, worth tens of trillions of dollars. The sheer scale of this is incomprehensible. Nations' central banks rely on it. Pension funds for millions of workers rely on it. Insurance giants rely on it. They think they are managing risk, but in truth, they are surrendering sovereignty to BlackRock's machine. Here's the hidden genius. Aladdin is not marketed as domination. It's marketed as safety. Trust us, BlackRock says. We'll protect your portfolio. We'll safeguard your assets. We'll guide you through storms. And who wouldn't want that? In a chaotic world, the illusion of certainty is priceless. But with every adoption, Aladdin grows more omniscient, more irreplaceable. At a certain point, unplugging from it becomes impossible, like trying to live without the internet. Now, let's go deeper. What happens when you control the risk models for the world's largest asset owners? You don't just observe the game, you set the rules of the game. If Aladdin identifies certain metrics as risky, funds shift away. If it identifies them as safe, capital floods in. Entire industries rise or fall not because of free market dynamics, but because BlackRock's machine coded them as such. Let's make this visceral. Imagine a sovereign nation, say a developing economy. Its bonds are fragile, its growth uncertain. If Aladdin's models shift against it, global capital can vanish overnight. Borrowing costs soar. Politicians panic. Suddenly, that nation is on its knees, not because of war, not because of natural disaster, but because an algorithm thousands of miles away decided they were no longer safe. This is financial warfare without a shot fired, without a declaration made. Quiet, clean, effective. This is why critics whisper that BlackRock's Aladdin is not just a risk management tool, it's a weaponized operating system for global finance. Once a country plugs in, it is effectively inside BlackRock's world. Its fate becomes tied to decisions, assumptions, and models created not by its own government, but by a private company in Manhattan. Let's zoom in on Larry Fink's brilliance. He didn't just build a company, he built dependence. The way heroin creates an addict, the way oil creates dependence, Aladdin creates a structural reliance. Once your entire financial system is built on it, you can't walk away. Your economy's heartbeat now beats to BlackRock's rhythm. And here's the chilling part. No one outside can audit this machine. No government regulator has full access. No independent watchdog has oversight. It is a black box, a fortress of code and mathematics that only BlackRock's inner circle truly understands. Even if regulators wanted to, even if governments demanded it, the sheer complexity of Aladdin makes it untouchable. Let's add another layer: predictive power. Imagine you're running the world's largest simulation of financial reality. You see stress points before they appear. You see vulnerabilities before they erupt. When the 2008 crisis hit, banks collapsed, governments scrambled. BlackRock didn't collapse. It expanded. Why? Because while others drowned in uncertainty, BlackRock became the life raft. With Aladdin, they positioned themselves as the savior, the stabilizer, the one institution you could turn to when the world burned. That crisis wasn't an accident for them. It was an opportunity, and they seized it flawlessly. Fast forward to today. Every geopolitical shock, a war, a pandemic, a trade dispute, flows into Aladdin's veins. It digests the chaos and spits out clarity. And while the public watches CNN or Bloomberg, while traders panic over volatility, BlackRock is calmly executing moves with knowledge no one else has. Here's the cinematic truth. Aladdin is not just observing markets, it is quietly shaping them. By guiding trillions of dollars in one direction or another, by labeling assets as safe or risky, by subtly influencing sentiment, it becomes the hidden hand behind global capital flows. And here's the paradox. No one voted for this. No parliament approved it. No nation authorized it. Yet here it is, silently running the backbone of the financial world. Larry Fink once said that in finance, trust is everything. He weaponized that principle. He built a machine so powerful, so indispensable, that the world has no choice but to trust it. Even if that trust means surrendering control. Even if it means the invisible empire of BlackRock now stretches into the marrow of global economics. So let me leave you with this picture. Imagine the Federal Reserve in Washington. Imagine the European Central Bank in Frankfurt. Imagine the Bank of Japan in Tokyo. All of them making policies, issuing statements, adjusting interest rates. Now imagine Aladdin sitting silently, absorbing every decision, simulating every consequence, positioning BlackRock ahead of every curve. While nations govern the surface, Aladdin governs the undercurrent, and the undercurrent is where true power lies. This is not finance. This is meta-finance, not markets. Meta-markets, not risk management, risk creation and orchestration. And if you understand this, you begin to see why BlackRock is not just a company. It is the operating system of the global economy. You want to know the real reason BlackRock isn't just another financial company? Why it isn't like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, or even the International Monetary Fund? Because BlackRock doesn't just manage money, it controls the operating system of global capitalism itself. Think about it. When you and I open a brokerage account, maybe we're buying stocks on Robinhood or Revolut. But when entire governments, entire nations need to borrow money, when central banks need to stabilize collapsing economies, when the world's biggest corporations need to move billions with a single click, guess who's sitting at the center of that digital spiderweb? BlackRock. And the secret weapon behind this power is something almost no one outside of Wall Street truly understands: Aladdin. Not the Disney character, not the genie, but the most powerful financial super AI in existence. Aladdin, the real brain of global finance. Aladdin is short for Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network. It is a hyper-intelligent risk management platform, basically the nervous system of the global financial system. While the public thinks BlackRock is just an asset manager, what it really has is an omniscient view of nearly every investment on Earth. Aladdin doesn't just track stocks. It tracks derivatives, bonds, ETFs, credit swaps, mortgage portfolios, sovereign debt. It processes 20,000 plus financial models in real time. It runs millions of stress tests daily on scenarios from war in the Middle East to oil prices collapsing, to natural disasters, to nuclear conflict. Governments use Aladdin. Pension funds use Aladdin. Banks use Aladdin. Even BlackRock's rivals, like State Street and Vanguard, rely on it. That means one company, Larry Fink's empire, has a godlike window into everything that moves in financial markets. Imagine if Google controlled 70% of all internet data, and Facebook, Amazon, and TikTok had to rent access from Google just to run their apps. That's the scale of BlackRock's advantage. The birth of the shadow bank. Let's rewind. Larry Fink didn't come from the classic Wall Street aristocracy. He wasn't a Rockefeller or a Morgan. He was a Jewish kid from California. Humble beginnings. He didn't have the blue blood connections of old money bankers. What he had was a different kind of brain. In the late 1970s, he worked at First Boston, a big investment bank. There, he pioneered mortgage-backed securities, the very product that would later implode in the 2008 crisis. But back then, it was revolutionary. Fink turned billions of mortgages into bonds, creating a brand new asset class that generated enormous profits. But then, disaster struck. In 1986, one of his trades went catastrophically wrong. A $100 million loss, his reputation destroyed overnight. Fink could have disappeared from finance. Most would have, but instead, he rebuilt. Smarter, harder, more obsessed with risk control. In 1988, with a small team of 8 people, he founded BlackRock. The mission? To create a financial machine that would never lose money unexpectedly again. That obsession, managing risk, quantifying every possible outcome, gave birth to Aladdin. And that obsession became the DNA of BlackRock. Why BlackRock is different from other giants. Here's the key insight. Most Wall Street firms are built to take risk. BlackRock was built to control risk. Goldman Sachs is a predator. It bets, it manipulates, it hunts. BlackRock is a machine. Cold, calculating, invisible. That's why governments trust BlackRock more than Goldman. BlackRock presents itself as the adult in the room, the sober guardian of capital. And because of this, it's been able to sink its claws into the deepest structures of the world economy. BlackRock and the 2008 crisis, from outsider to kingmaker. The financial system was burning to the ground. Lehman Brothers collapsed. AIG was on life support. Governments didn't know which way was up. Guess who the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve turned to? BlackRock. Why? Because Aladdin could do what no government agency could. Run models on trillions of toxic mortgage securities. Identify what was worthless, what could be saved, and how to stabilize the wreckage. BlackRock didn't just advise the U.S., it executed the cleanup. It told the government which assets to buy, which to freeze, which to pump liquidity into. In effect, it was the operating surgeon of the global bailout. And here's the sinister part. By doing this, BlackRock wasn't just rescuing the system. It was embedding itself permanently into the very architecture of global finance. Since then, whenever a crisis hits, European debt meltdown, COVID-19, bank collapses, governments don't call Goldman first. They call Larry Fink. Quiet power. Owning without owning. Here's a mind bender. BlackRock manages over $10 trillion. But technically, it doesn't own those assets. It manages them on behalf of investors, pension funds, governments, institutions. So when BlackRock is the biggest shareholder of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, JP Morgan, Pfizer, Blackstone, it's not Larry Fink's personal money, it's client money. But here's the trick. By being the manager, BlackRock votes the shares. It decides corporate governance. It influences board seats. It shapes strategy. So while it doesn't legally own, it controls. This is why BlackRock has been called the world's largest shadow bank. Not a bank in name, but more powerful than any bank in practice. ESG, the Trojan horse of control. Now let's talk about one of the most controversial plays, ESG, environmental, social, governance investing. On the surface, it sounds noble. Companies should be environmentally friendly. They should care about social issues. They should have responsible governance. Who could disagree? But here's the hidden layer. BlackRock uses ESG as a lever of influence. When you control trillions, you can threaten companies. Adopt our ESG standards, or we'll dump your stock. Follow our guidelines, or you'll lose access to capital. Overnight, entire industries began bowing to BlackRock's framework. Oil and gas giants, tech companies, even governments. Because when the world's largest asset manager says, jump, the market asks, how high? ESG became less about saving the planet and more about consolidating control, the invisible web of influence. Think about this. BlackRock is the top shareholder in almost every major corporation you interact with daily. Tech? BlackRock holds Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. Finance? BlackRock holds JP Morgan, Goldman, Citibank. Healthcare? BlackRock holds Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna. Energy? BlackRock holds Exxon, Chevron, BP. Through its iShares ETFs, BlackRock channels billions into the global bloodstream of stocks and bonds. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's quiet domination. This means BlackRock sits in boardrooms without ever stepping into the room. It influences corporate strategy without a single press conference. It whispers, and the economy obeys. The next phase, BlackRock and artificial intelligence. Here's what almost nobody is paying attention to. BlackRock isn't just sitting on its throne, it's preparing for the next financial battlefield, AI-driven prediction and control. Aladdin was the first generation. Now, BlackRock is feeding it data pipelines from climate science, geopolitics, consumer behavior, social media signals, supply chains, satellite data. What does this mean? It means BlackRock is building not just a map of money, but a map of reality. It can anticipate not just where capital will flow, but where human behavior will go, which countries will destabilize, which industries will rise, which governments will fall. This isn't finance anymore. It's civilizational strategy. So the next time you hear the word BlackRock, don't think of a bank. Don't think of an asset manager. Think of the silent empire. The empire that doesn't need tanks, doesn't need soldiers, doesn't need parliaments or prime ministers. It only needs one thing: your dependence on money. And since everyone, from presidents to pensioners, is dependent on money, BlackRock doesn't just manage wealth. It manages the world. Have you ever wondered what it looks like when a single entity is so deeply entrenched in the system that it no longer plays the game? It writes the rules of the game? That's where we are with BlackRock. Let me take you deeper. Governments, central banks, regulators, these are supposed to be the referees of the global financial match, right? The watchdogs who make sure nobody gets too big, too powerful, too dangerous. But here's the paradox. BlackRock isn't just another player to be watched. It's the advisor to the referees themselves. Let me explain. When the European Central Bank was struggling during the sovereign debt crisis, who did they call? BlackRock. When the U.S. Federal Reserve was deciding how to stabilize the corporate bond market in 2020, who was managing the programs? BlackRock. When Greece was in flames economically, who was designing their restructuring strategies? BlackRock. Do you see the pattern? BlackRock is not just influencing markets. It is embedded in the architecture of nation-states. And this creates an illusion. You see, we think of governments as being in control. But when the government itself calls on BlackRock for advice, for data, for execution, who is really governing? Now, let's step into the psychological game. Imagine this. You are an investor managing a few $100 million. Not small, but compared to BlackRock, you're a goldfish swimming beside a whale. Every move you make, you must consider. What is BlackRock going to do? Because when they shift their weight in the market, entire industries tremble. When BlackRock raises its stake in oil, investors flock behind it. When BlackRock signals that renewable energy is the future, trillions suddenly flow into green funds. And when Larry Fink issues his now famous letters to CEOs about sustainability, corporate boards scramble to align, not because they care about the planet, but because the shadow bank that owns them all just told them what the future looks like. This is not democracy. This is not free market capitalism. This is behavioral conditioning on a planetary scale. But wait, it gets darker. Have you heard of the BlackRock Wall Street Washington triangle? Few talk about it openly, but it's the holy trinity of influence. Wall Street executes the financial maneuvers. Washington sets the policies. BlackRock provides the intelligence, the structure, and, let's be honest, the leverage. Do you know how many ex-BlackRock executives are sitting in the highest levels of government? Treasury, Federal Reserve, economic councils. The revolving door doesn't just exist between Wall Street and Washington. It is now spinning faster with BlackRock at its center. And when crises hit, 2008, 2020, guess who the government trusted to run bailout programs? Not your elected officials, not even the Fed's internal teams. It was BlackRock. The fox isn't guarding the henhouse. The fox built the henhouse, installed the locks, and owns the chickens. Now let's peel back another layer. Their data operations. Remember Aladdin, the AI-driven platform I spoke about earlier? Aladdin is not just software. It is a military-grade intelligence weapon. It ingests information from every corner of the globe: stock movements, bond yields, credit risks, geopolitical signals, weather patterns, even social sentiment. It models millions of potential scenarios in real time, simulating how markets could react to any shock. Think about that. While governments argue in Parliament, while investors watch CNBC for news, BlackRock already knows. They see the ripple effect before the first pebble even hits the water. And this data advantage makes them invincible, because in the market, information is power. But predictive information, that's divine power. Now here's where it gets chilling. Aladdin doesn't just monitor markets, it shapes them. When BlackRock moves billions based on Aladdin's predictions, the market bends to its will. Then, Aladdin recalibrates, feeding on its own influence, like an AI god sculpting reality in its own image. That's not risk management anymore. That's reality management. Now, project this into the future. BlackRock controls $10 trillion today, but through Aladdin, it indirectly oversees another $20 trillion managed by other firms that rely on its platform. That's $30 trillion of influence, more than the GDP of the US and China combined. If this trajectory continues in 10 years, it may not even be possible to distinguish between the market and BlackRock. And here's the haunting question I want you to carry with you. If one entity can see everything, shape everything, and own everything, are we still free participants in the economy? Or have we all become actors in a financial simulation designed by Larry Fink's invisible empire? Because freedom without financial sovereignty is an illusion. Nations may wave flags, governments may hold elections, but if BlackRock holds the purse strings, who really rules the world? Now, let's step out of Wall Street boardrooms and into the battlefield of geopolitics. Because here's the truth. BlackRock isn't just a financial entity, it's a geopolitical weapon. Follow the money, and you'll see. Every war, every energy crisis, every climate agenda, there's a BlackRock fingerprint somewhere in the shadows. Let's start with energy. For over a century, oil has been the blood of the global economy. Wars have been fought over it. Empires have risen and fallen by it. But in the 21st century, oil's not just energy, it's leverage. So ask yourself, who controls ExxonMobil? Chevron, BP, Shell? Who are the largest shareholders quietly sitting at the top of their ownership charts? The answer, BlackRock. Alongside Vanguard, yes, but BlackRock is the heavyweight. And here's the sinister paradox. At the very same time BlackRock pressures CEOs to commit to a green energy, they are bankrolling fossil fuel giants. How do you play both sides of the chessboard? Like this. On one hand, you profit from the last gasps of the oil age. On the other, you position yourself to dominate the renewable revolution. So no matter how the energy war plays out, you win. Now let's take this further. The war in Ukraine. Public narrative says it's about sovereignty, democracy, defense against aggression. But peel back the curtain and what do you find? Western sanctions on Russia sent shockwaves through global energy markets. European nations scrambled for alternatives. LNG imports skyrocketed. Oil prices spiked, defense budgets exploded. And guess which firms saw massive capital inflows? The very energy giants that BlackRock owns, the very defense contractors that BlackRock owns. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, the companies arming wars across the globe, who are their top institutional shareholders? BlackRock. So tell me, when bombs fall and markets panic, when governments print billions to buy weapons, is this chaos or is it a business model? Now let's move to climate. BlackRock has branded itself as the champion of ESG, environmental, social, governance investing. Larry Fink preaches it like gospel in his annual letters. Companies must align with sustainability or risk extinction. Sounds noble, right? Save the planet, transition to clean energy, invest in a green future. But here's what few realize. ESG isn't about saving the planet. It's about owning the transition. Think about it. Governments worldwide are pledging trillions for renewable infrastructure, carbon credits, green bonds. And who manages the funds? Who advises the governments? Who structures the deals? BlackRock. They are turning climate change into a trillion-dollar asset class. Not a moral mission, a profit machine. And while you and I are told to recycle, buy paper straws, and feel guilty about our carbon footprint, BlackRock is quietly cornering the market in the very companies that will profit from the so-called green revolution. Now, let's pull the lens even wider. The geopolitical chessboard today isn't just about armies or land, it's about capital flows. And BlackRock is the puppet master. They can shift trillions across borders with a keystroke. They can make a nation's bond market collapse overnight. They can starve industries by pulling investment, or supercharge them by flooding them with liquidity. That is not financial power. That is sovereignty-level power, and governments know it. Why do you think Larry Fink has personal access to presidents, prime ministers, and central bankers? Why do you think in Davos, when BlackRock speaks, entire cabinets listen? Because nations know the terrifying truth. They are not just being governed by parliaments or congresses, they are being financed into obedience. Let me give you an example. When developing nations take IMF or World Bank loans, there are strings attached. Policy conditions, austerity measures. But when those same nations seek foreign investment through bond markets or global funds, who decides if the capital flows in or stays out? BlackRock and its peers. If BlackRock downgrades confidence in a country, investors flee, currencies collapse, governments fall. That's how you wage modern warfare, without firing a single bullet. This is economic shock and awe, and the Aladdin system we discussed earlier, it's the ultimate control tower for this. Feeding real-time intelligence on which governments are stable, which currencies are vulnerable, which industries are ripe for takeover. It's not a trading platform anymore. It's a geopolitical radar system. Now ask yourself this. When one firm has the power to weaponize capital at this scale, is it still capitalism, or is it financial imperialism? Because here's the dark reality. BlackRock doesn't need to conquer nations with armies. It conquers them with investments. And the beauty of it? The victims don't even resist. They roll out the red carpet. They beg BlackRock to invest. They give tax breaks, deregulation, favorable terms, all for the illusion of capital inflow. But once you're in debt to BlackRock, once your economy depends on its flows, can you ever really escape? This is how empires are built in the 21st century, not with swords, not with tanks, with spreadsheets and capital flows. And if you think this is just theory, look at the numbers. BlackRock has positions in nearly every major defense contractor, every major fossil fuel company, every major renewable project, every major bank. War, peace, oil, solar, destruction, reconstruction, they win either way. This is not capitalism. This is not democracy. This is the total monetization of geopolitics. And that's the game being played right now in real time. Up until now, we've looked at BlackRock as an empire of finance, trillions in assets, Aladdin watching the world, governments on strings, wars turned into balance sheets. But what if I told you that money is not the final frontier? Because the deeper truth is this: the ultimate form of control isn't owning resources. It isn't funding wars. It isn't even controlling governments. The ultimate form of control is shaping what people believe is real. And that is exactly where BlackRock is moving next. Let's start with media. Every major media conglomerate, Disney, Comcast, Warner Bros., Fox, Paramount, trace their top institutional shareholders back to BlackRock and Vanguard. That means the movies you watch, the news you consume, the series that flood Netflix, the sports you obsess over, all of it passes through financial pipelines owned by the same shadow giant. Think about the illusion of choice. You flip channels, you scroll streaming platforms, you think you're choosing from a buffet of independent voices. But behind the curtain, the same two firms, BlackRock and Vanguard, sit at the top of the shareholder pyramid. So when narratives need to be coordinated, whether it's war, climate, identity, elections, or pandemics, the machinery is already in place. Now let's move to advertising. Ever wonder why certain ideas feel everywhere at once? Why one slogan, one trend, one ideology suddenly dominates commercials, billboards, YouTube pre-rolls, TikToks, Super Bowl ads, all within the same few weeks? That's not random, that's orchestration. And who controls the advertising agencies? WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, Interpublic, the global giants of marketing. Again, BlackRock sits in the shadows of their ownership. So the same firm that owns the products you buy also owns the media that tells you to buy them, and the ad agencies that craft the campaigns to seduce you. That's not a free market. That's perception management at planetary scale. But it doesn't stop there. Let's talk culture. When BlackRock pushes ESG and social responsibility, it's not just about markets. It's about behavioral conditioning. Suddenly, your favorite shows push the same talking points. Your social media floods with the same hashtags. Your music videos, your Netflix dramas, your Marvel movies, all subtly tuned to reinforce the narratives that BlackRock is financially positioned to benefit from. This is not conspiracy. It's return on investment. If you control the flow of money, the flow of media, and the flow of culture, you don't need to dictate behavior. You design it. Now here's where it gets even darker. Data and algorithms. Remember Aladdin, the risk analysis system tracking trillions in assets? Imagine fusing that with the algorithms of social media giants. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Every click you make, every scroll you take, every second you linger on a video, that's behavioral gold. That's not entertainment. That's predictive programming. And guess who sits among the largest shareholders of Meta, Alphabet, and other tech giants? BlackRock. Do you see the pattern? They don't just know what you buy, they know what you think. They don't just know your politics. They can nudge them. They don't just measure behavior. They can manufacture consent. This isn't a company anymore. This is an operating system for humanity. And then comes the final frontier, AI. BlackRock has already begun embedding AI not just into Aladdin, but into every dimension of its empire. AI-driven trading, AI-driven risk analysis, AI-driven behavioral prediction. But here's the twist. AI doesn't just predict, it shapes. Think of it like this. If I know you're 72% likely to make a decision, all I need is the right ad, the right video, the right nudge, and that probability jumps to 95%. Now scale that across populations. Scale that across elections. Scale that across generational worldviews. That's not prediction anymore. That's social engineering with mathematical precision. Let's bring this together. BlackRock owns the companies that produce the news. They own the platforms that distribute the news. They own the advertisers that fund the news. They own the social media giants that filter the news. And through AI, they have the tools to edit your very perception of reality. Do you understand the power of that? The ability to wage war, not on nations, not on markets, but on the human mind. This is psychological warfare hidden inside streaming subscriptions and ad campaigns. This is mass hypnosis, monetized through dividends. And the most terrifying part? You don't even notice it happening, because it doesn't feel like propaganda. It feels like culture. It feels like entertainment. It feels like reality. And so we arrive at the real question. If BlackRock controls what we see, what we hear, what we buy, what we believe, if they control governments, markets, wars, energy, culture, and now thought itself, where does freedom end and where does programming begin? Because maybe, just maybe, your choices aren't your own. Your opinions aren't your own. Your worldview isn't your own. They've all been curated, designed, and optimized by the same trillion-dollar shadow empire. Let's go deeper. We've seen how BlackRock controls money, governments, media, and perception. But there's still one battlefield left. The most intimate battlefield of all, your wallet. Because the final stage of control is not about influencing what you watch or buy. It's about controlling the very medium of exchange itself. Let's start with central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. You've heard whispers. Maybe you think it's just conspiracy talk. But the truth? Every major central bank on Earth, from the Fed to the ECB, from the Bank of England to the People's Bank of China, is racing toward launching a digital currency. Why? Because physical cash is freedom. Cash can't be tracked. Cash can't be censored. Cash doesn't care what you believe, who you vote for, or what you post online. But digital currency? That's programmable money. It can expire. It can be restricted. It can be frozen with a single keystroke. Now imagine who manages the infrastructure, who integrates the banks, who advises governments on risk, who provides the models for rollout. Yes, BlackRock. They are already positioning themselves as the architects of the global transition from cash to digital. Because if you control the plumbing of the world's financial system, you don't just influence economies, you dictate human survival. Let's take this further. Picture this. You're living in the near future. Your wages come in a digital wallet. Your spending is tracked in real time. And one day, you post something online that challenges the official narrative. Suddenly, your wallet doesn't work. Your funds are frozen for security. Your transactions are limited to approved merchants. You've been quietly blacklisted, not by law, not by trial, but by algorithm. And who oversees the algorithm? Who owns the risk systems, the analytics, the platforms? BlackRock. This is not finance anymore. This is financial totalitarianism. But wait, it gets even darker. Let's talk about surveillance capitalism. Right now, companies like Google, Meta, and Amazon harvest your data, your searches, your clicks, your purchases. They sell that data to advertisers, to governments, to partners. But when the currency itself becomes digital, every single transaction becomes data. Where you eat, what you buy, who you donate to, what causes you support, how much energy you consume, how often you travel, all of it fed into one vast planetary risk analysis engine. And who do you think is best positioned to own and analyze that data at scale? BlackRock. Remember, they already have Aladdin. They already model risk across the entire financial system. Now imagine fusing that with CBDC transaction flows. That's not just risk management. That's a God's eye view of the human economy. And it doesn't stop there. Let's add social credit. If you think that's just China, you're wrong. Because the West has already begun its own version, not through overt government scoring systems, but through the financial sector, your ESG rating, your carbon footprint, your compliance with sustainable or responsible spending. And behind every index, every score, every sustainability ranking, you'll find BlackRock's fingerprints. They fund it, they promote it, they profit from it. So in the future, when your digital wallet blocks your flight purchase because you've exceeded your monthly carbon limit, or when your grocery spending is capped because you bought too much red meat, understand, this isn't environmentalism. It's control disguised as virtue, and BlackRock is writing the code. Now let's zoom out. What happens when CBDCs connect across borders? When the Fed's digital dollar links with Europe's digital euro, with China's digital yuan, with Africa's mobile-first digital currencies, you get interoperability, a seamless, global, programmable money system. And guess who positions themselves as the neutral asset manager overseeing cross-border flows, ensuring stability, security, and compliance? BlackRock. At that point, the nation-state doesn't matter. Borders don't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. Because the real sovereignty isn't in parliaments or presidencies, it's in the code of the currency. And the architects of that code are not elected. They're not accountable. They're not even visible. They're sitting in skyscrapers, managing trillions, quietly shaping the rules of the new global operating system. Do you see the pattern now? First, BlackRock became the largest landlord on Earth, buying up homes, turning citizens into tenants. Then they became the advisor of governments, whispering policies in the ears of prime ministers and presidents. Then they became the owners of media, shaping culture, controlling narratives. Then they became the masters of algorithms, predicting and nudging human behavior. And now they're positioning to own the very fabric of money itself. At that point, freedom isn't taken with tanks. It isn't taken with laws. It isn't taken with surveillance cameras. It's taken silently, invisibly, with the switch of a digital wallet. Let me make this cinematic for you. Imagine this scene. You're standing at a supermarket checkout, You scan your groceries. You tap your phone to pay. Declined. You try again. Declined. The cashier frowns. Behind you, the line grows. And on your phone, a notification appears. Transaction blocked due to non-compliance with carbon spending limits. Contact your provider. That provider? BlackRock. Now multiply that by billions of people. Every citizen on Earth living under the quiet algorithmic governance of a single shadow empire. No protests, no revolutions, no wars. Just quiet compliance, because the system itself makes rebellion impossible. That's not science fiction. That's the future BlackRock is building. And so I leave you with this question. If freedom is no longer stolen by force, but by architecture, if control is no longer imposed with violence but with code, how do you resist something you cannot see? How do you fight an empire that hides inside your own wallet? How do you escape a prison where the bars are invisible and the chains are digital? This is not the future of finance. This is the future of humanity itself. And the architects are already at work. Their name is BlackRock.